Hi, I'm John from Pops.
I'm Mike Miller, here in Galena, Oregon. We're going to talk about how Galena came about and some of the history.
So, I got a question, Mike. How did Galena get its name?
Well, at one point, Galena was called Susanville, and back in probably around 1901, they came down from Elk Creek, which is about 2 miles away, and decided to take the post office. So the post office and all the equipment that was with the post office ended up going up to Elk Creek, which turned out then to be Susanville, because they took the post office, they took the name. So that left us with no name. And they decided that they'd call it Galena for the ore that is in this area. And so about 1901, it then became Galena, Oregon, and Susanville moved up there, and it's Susanville. So
The last time I was here, I've noticed new buildings have been recreated here. What's the purpose of it?
So the purpose of recreating buildings is to add to the history. We've, since you were here last, we've put together a bank. And just so everybody knows, we are taking deposits. We only have 50% withdrawals though, so that might be a problem, but we're more than willing to take your money. It's very secure. We got bars and everything on there. So anyhow, we created that to kind of put together the group of buildings that we do have here, with the church, the jail, the bunkhouse, now the bank. We have what we would call our mine shaft. We have an ore wagon so we can unload the gold when we pull it out of there, if we can find it. And then our old building that we do have that is original to the property is thereabouts 155 years old. It's been everything in its lifetime, between a store, a gas station later on. We have one of those old gas pumps here where they used to pump it up. And it was a meat market. We found out too it was a meat market. So with the combination of everything that we have together, we've created this sort of an oasis out in the middle of nowhere, because as you tour around this part of eastern Oregon, you will probably observe that there's not a lot still together. There are some buildings, whether it be Sumter or Granite, that have some buildings left in them, but all in all though, is like Susanville. It doesn't have much of anything because it got neglected and nobody's taken any interest in trying to keep it together, and that's why we're doing what we're doing here.
It's good to know. So, now, isn't there a river nearby?
We have the Middle John Day, not too far from here. You can fish in there. We sometimes take our showers in there, bathe. It's fun to go down there and cool off, and then it's so close as well. So yeah, we are lucky to have that as close as it is.
Is there any history on that river?
So what happened on that river, it started somewhere in, probably 1920s, and it was Tim's Dredging Company who was actually the company who was doing the dredging. And they dredged this a long ways. They just went down the middle John Day, and they just kept dredging. And they're starting to restore a lot of the areas on each side of the town, but they are going to keep where the town itself exists. They're going to keep the dredging the way it is to show people what damage it actually did do. So
the dredging is similar to Sumter, Oregon, and up in that area, how damaging it was.
Oh, it was very damaging on the environment there. And thank goodness they don't do it no more. I mean, because they used the high-powered hoses and everything. I mean, you know, it was a pretty tough deal. And they were here for, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around 12 to 15 years dredging. Because it takes a, you know, once they set that dredger in place, it's there for quite a while. And so it slowly goes down the river itself and the side banks. So. And by the way, so the biggest chunk that ever came out of Oregon came out of this area right here, and it's sitting at the U.S. Bank in Baker, Oregon, at 80.3 ounces.
Really?
It's the biggest one that still exists in the state of Oregon, and it can be seen right there in Baker, at the U.S. Bank, on display. So at one time we had over 5,000 people living in the surrounding areas. And in fact, it was almost, well, it was one vote away from being the seat of the county, of Grant County. So I guess one vote does count.
How many people actually lived here in Galena?
Well, at one time itself, if you just kind of map out where the houses probably were in that, there was probably, you know, like 50, 60 structures here. Now, the only person that was here, and his name was Cody, and across the street he built his house, and he was here 50 years. He's passed away, but he was the last resident that actually lived here full time.
Wow.
So now we have about 12 or 13 different families that own property in Galena and close to Galena that still have property here. And then some of them date back to, we had a big family called the Gibbs. And the Gibbs, at one time, they controlled most of the town because they just did. And we still have some Gibbs still here that own a lot of the property still. So they're keeping their hands on it, probably for a couple reasons, you know, because they have had it in the family for 100 some years. So, yeah.
Oh. I heard there was a little bit of a ghost around Galena. It's the ghost of Galena.
The ghost of Galena. That is a very interesting story. So, cousin Gary there and I were sitting there having our evening relaxation, and we noticed over to the church over there that the chair was rocking. And we thought, wow, that is something. I wish I had my camera so I could at least record it. And so I did. I went and got the camera, and Gary says, well, we could maybe move it along. I says, I don't think we have to do that. And so we sat there and we watched and we watched and we watched, and all of a sudden that chair starts rocking. And it had some background music. To this day, I don't know where that music is at anymore because I never heard it before and never heard it after.
Wow.
And so, but it was sure, it was in beat with what we were seeing, so yeah.
Now, going up, how far is Susanville from here?
Susanville is 2 miles from here, and there are a few structures, not many, that are even standing there. I think there's 1 or 2 buildings that still have some walls up. And they dredged up that direction as well. They dredged mostly coming down the river, because that's where they do the dredging part. But even looking for gold, most of it was, you know, either way up in the hills or it was further down on the water side of it. So
I noticed the last time I was up there, they had a mine shaft boarded up.
we have probably, and Gary will probably show you where they're at. We have 3 or 4 that are accessible, and Gary even got permission on one of them. They even actually go in, and
Wow.
so it's very interesting because, again, that's the history. There was a lot of gold taken out of this area, because they mined it for the longest time. First it was the miners themselves, then it was the dredgers, and then the Chinese came in, and they worked this pretty hard. They'll get a little pebble, they'll work pretty hard, but they were the last ones to actually mine for gold in itself, or try to locate it. There are some mine permits that are still around here, that people go up there and pick the rocks, and hopefully they might find it. Now, just by coincidence, our neighbor was putting in a well, and we were sitting there watching it, and the supervisor of the company there had his little butterfly net, and he was catching sparkles of gold.
Wow.
The first 10 feet is where he says you'll find it. And he had his net up there, and these little sprinkles of gold were going in there.
Wow.
And so anyhow, he said that, it'd take an awful lot of sprinkles to get anything out of it. But anyhow, we did sandbag a couple of 5-gallon buckets that we're going to have fun with them one day and see if there's actually anything more in there. But,
that makes sense.
Yeah. This area right here, the town itself wasn't mined. So there's a possibility there could be some gold in the town itself. Everything around it was mined, but not the town itself.
Okay. Is there any other buildings besides the reconstructed buildings that are still original to the town?
So we have a building over there that's 155 years, or excuse me, it is 156 years old. And so at one point the town itself had a saloon, had many of them, but one was called the Red Dog Saloon.
And I noticed your shirt.
The shirt, we are recreating that to this side. It was up on the hillside, and we're going to bring it back, and it'll only be about 100 feet from where it originally was. And we're going to go ahead and bring back and put in the saloon and bring back that history again. And then we'll put a little stake on the other side and just indicate that it had been relocated to the other side of the street. So, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then that White House that's down the road used to be the hotel?
Yeah, so if you used to go to the end of town, basically, that house used to be the hotel, and actually they still rented out the hunters to this day. It's been known to have a bat collection. They come out at nighttime, and they've drilled their holes, and they'll come out of the attic. And I was in the house a couple years ago and was told by the owner that they had taken out 39 bags of bat stuff.
Wow.
Out of the attic up there.
Jeez.
And when I was in the room, I could see that it had been leaking in one of the bedrooms. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa. So I bet that, and I went down, they have a cellar there. And that's where they used to keep old Betsy. That was the cow. In the old days, I mean, when you had livestock, they lived with you. And that, and he showed me where they tied them up. He had a little ramp going down underneath that the hotel, and that's where they kept old Betsy.
Wow.
And that, so they'd have milk, and so it's very interesting. The people that own that have owned that for their family over 100 years, and so and it's still in the family.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of history.
Well, history is something that, unfortunately, a lot of the generation don't seem to want to hear it, but, if we don't keep some history, they won't even know where they came from or what was even done around them and how they even got to that point. When things start, I mean, you don't just start out with a computer, you have to work it the hard way from the ground up. And I think by having something that is, even if it is partially recreated, it's still showing that the history. When somebody comes into one of our buildings, they are in awe because they cannot believe that it could have possibly looked like this. And we try to keep things in here that are to the era of that time.
And
So.
back then, I know it was rough for a lot of people to live and survive, being so isolated.
It was very isolated. They came from John Day, Prairie City, and usually they had buggy carriages to bring the supplies, and they would come up 2 to 3 times, year round to supply this town, Galena, and also the stolen name of Susanville up a little further. So it was hard. There's no doubt about that, because it flat gets cold up here. So yeah, there was no per se running water. I mean, everything was old time. Back it up a long ways. 1860. That's not a lot of luxuries back then.
Just like nowadays, being out so far away from town and civilization, you don't have the ability with electronics because no services, and a lot of people that can't really live without electronics is frustrated because they can't do what they want to do.
Well, when they come here, they're going to go back in time. We have what we call outhouses. A lot of the younger generation may not know what an outhouse is, but many people in the past definitely know what an outhouse is. It has the moon sign on it. No. So just a luxury of having a non-heated outhouse would be, and is usually located further from the house for obvious reasons, and that. So, I mean, everything was a lot harder. I mean, if the house caught on fire, there was no fire truck to come. It burned to the ground. And so, living in the past, my mother-in-law was born in a tent about a mile from here.
Really?
Because the deal about that is that, it would be her mother, and that they were, and her father were ranchers. He was a ranch hand, and he had to go where the work was. But my mother-in-law itself was born in a tent right here, actually in Susanville. So yeah, so the history goes back a long ways, and even when this property was purchased, many pieces of property. It doesn't sound like anything now, but she paid $250 for all this property, with $100 down and $75, a month until it was paid off.
Wow.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that. Most people's electric bills cost more than that.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Well, there's some history we didn't get last year, or last time we were up here.
Yeah, and her name was Nani, and yeah, thanks to her, we were able to continue on, and Cousin Gary, and Cousin Gary and I have taken it to a different level. Otherwise, as the buildings were deteriorating, they were just falling to the ground like most of the other ones that have.
It's great that you guys are bringing a lot of the history back out, for the younger generation and people that don't know about it.
Well, and what is history? History is simple, something that's in the past, and if you don't know what it is or you've never seen it, you probably don't really care. But if you actually see it, and your little clock's going to tell you in your brain that, what is that? Or what was that? Did they actually use that for that? I mean, they didn't have you didn't go to Walmart around here. If you needed something, you better figure out how you're going to do it. And that's the part of the history.
Yeah.
And I think now the younger generations, if you can pull them away from their iPhones, you're doing good.
Yeah, one of the members that we do have here is always on his phone. So
on that. So the fact that they can come to a place like this and actually get a little breather. It's something that opens their eyes a little bit, because they've been so focused on, something that is what it is, And this is something that has been here and something that's, has a history to it. I mean, without places like this, nobody's going to know, They won't even know what a gold mine is or gold shaft unless they read in the history book, if they don't take it out of the schools.
Just like when I say, hey, I'm going up to Galena. Where's that?
Exactly.
Not a lot of people know where Galena is, but everybody knows where Sumter is.
Yeah, you see Sumter, they know because the town still has, there you go. The town has activity.
Yeah.
And they've kind of kept it a town and a destination. You've hit the nail right on the head. They know more so because it has a good location, and they've kept the town with that old style and gold mining theme and everything else. So there you go.
It's almost like a amusement park that you go to.
Right. I mean, we're not as big or by any means, but it's still, this is a part of the history, because we do have one claim they don't have, the biggest chunk of gold. If we're going to weigh things out, I'd say Galena's got a little upper hand on that.
Well, and you do have a lot of history of the mining and the mine shafts and stuff that Sumter doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean, they have the dredger, which is nice. And that.
The history there,
yeah, we're glad that it relocated somewhere else from here.
Yeah.
But anyhow, no, and this whole creation of what we're doing here is just preserving history. Something we get people all the time they just can't wait to come in and peek in the buildings and that. And to their surprise, I mean, they always are very surprised when they do, because
you do have some history and you make it look authentic.
It is. I mean, you don't want to get locked in this jail overnight, you know.
Unfortunately, 3 of us are, so... Yeah.
Well, it's part of the
hey,
job.
at least you got a guard dog.
That's true, yeah.
The guard dog's going to make sure that, nobody, none of us can escape,
Yeah, there you go.
You got 3 men you just arrested today, so go figure that one out.
But anyhow, most of the people who do come in here, they enjoy, because they haven't seen too much of like this. I mean, you don't just pull off the road and there you go. It's like pull off the road and where was it? And that, in fact, Gary, he went to this little town there off of 395. He drove down this gravel road. It had a name at one time. It still does on the sign. Went down there and there's a little bitty building, a nothing building, and that's all's left,
Wow.
So if that building blows over, you might as well take the sign down because there's nothing to look at. So the fortunate thing is, for here, people do have something to look at and then come in, and if we're here, we'll be more than happy to give them a little bit of history.
So how would people know that if you guys are here or not?
Well, a lot of it is on YouTube. Cousin Gary posts a lot of stuff on YouTube. More and more people actually are finding out. When we did the eclipse that we had a couple of 3 or 4 years ago, I had some people out of Redding, California, and this was their destination. How they picked it, who knows? Galena, Oregon is where they're coming. They drove all the way from California to come to this town. And that we couldn't believe it ourselves. Why, of all places, they would pick this dot on the map. But they did, and we're still friends even. I visit them. But I think more and more we are on the bicycle touring route. We're also on the motorcycle touring route, so we get motorcycle people that are stopping here, and they're telling people. And we are getting a lot more people stopping in, and I think as time goes on and there's more to look at, it gives more interest for people to even stop even more. So
that's interesting.
So,
and I'm glad to actually be friends with these guys here. They know a lot of history. Come on down, see them, talk to them. Just make sure they're here, though. Do not help yourself to come in.
Well, we want to make sure that, for many years, everybody can enjoy what we do have here. And I think that more and more people are going to be stopping in. I got lots of friends that are waiting for me to give them the schedule. And so they can't wait.
Do you have a website?
We don't have a website per se, but if they was just to look up ghost towns, Galena, Oregon, anything that kind of relates to Oregon and general, they'll see stuff on there, and they can learn some of the stuff of how we built things and how it's created and what we did to make it what it is. But we're more than welcome to talk to people. Cousin Gary, he loves talking to people, so that works out pretty good. You come in and he'll give you the full tour.
He's a good guy.
He is a great guy.
I'm great to be friends with Gary.
Yeah, Gary is. He does a great job.
And I'm glad to be back here. Getting a little bit more history. Things that we never found out. Actually enjoying what you guys have done with the jail. The last time we were here, they had tape on the floor. And you couldn't cross that line. Trust me, if you came here and stayed the night, you couldn't cross that line. You're in jail,
Yeah, we had to get these sturdy cells all built here and that, so yeah. Now if you just come back in a couple more years, you'll get to surprise again, because when we have the saloon going, and I don't know if I should say this, because there might be a small section that might be called a bordello, but if you see the red light, we don't want you to be offended. It's all in fun.
So, everybody, come on down to Galena. If you see a flag or them here, don't be shy. Come on in. Check them out. Look at the buildings. Stay a night. They'll allow it.
We're here quite often during the summer.
Yeah, during the months of the summer there's usually somebody here, normally every other weekend, and then on August, 3 weeks, there's somebody here, so good chance that you'll run into somebody here, and they'll give you the tour, and you'll enjoy it. It'll be worth it. We've had people come from a long ways away to come here, so if you're going by, put on the brakes and see a little history.
And also, sign the guest book while you're here. And if you see a ghost hunting wanted sign, make sure you don't follow me home. It's alright.